Hello and good morning to all of you for attending such an important part of the NFPA 70 training session. In this session, we are going to discuss Article 120, that is very important article of NFPA 70E. This is the default requirement upon which NFPA 70 is developed. This article is the heart of NFPA 70 standard. It defines an electrically safe working condition. So if we want to define an electrically safe working condition, it is a state at which equipment is de-energized or isolated for the duration at which electrical or qualified electrical person is going to work on an electrical circuit or equipment. As per ISO 31000 risk management system, there are certain hierarchy of control to eliminate the hazards and reduces their risk. So one of the first hierarchy of control is elimination. So this article is certainly based on eliminating the hazardous electrical energy, so that any electrical engineer, supervisor, or any electrical technician can work safely on a de-energized and isolated equipment. In this session, we are going to discuss a very important and the last clause of this article, that is 120.6. That is based on creating and verification of electrically safe condition and their processes. So there are 8 steps or processes that should be performed or shall be performed mandatory in a proper sequence or a defined sequence to achieve an electrically safe working condition. If any electrical supervisor, engineer or technician missing any of the step or swapping any of the step or rearranging any of the steps, so it can cause an electric shock, electric blast or arc flash. So maintaining and applying all these steps, we can achieve an electrically safe working conditions. The number one step on establishing an electrically safe working condition is identify all the sources of hazardous electrical energy. There are various sources of electrical energies, such as number one, identifying utility supplies, such as grid stations, a supply from grid station, a supply from any utilities, distribution systems, transformers, such as different distribution lines supplying power to the houses, domestics, commercials, and as well as industrial feeders. So other source of the electrical energy or hazardous energy is a backup generator, such as GE, gas gen, Barker engines or diesel generators. The third source is UPS. As a matter of fact, UPS is another source. If the main source is blackout or is shut down, then the UPS will active and supply the power to the loads or the distribution system. Another source of electrical hazardous energy is a capacitor that stores energy even when the power is shut down. It is the ability of the capacitor to store energy, that is equal to E is equal to 1 upon 2 CV square. Another source is, we can say that, interconnected equipments. We all know that in industries there are multiple sources or multiple backup systems are used in a configuration of ringman system or network or interconnected grid systems in utility systems. So there are many interconnected systems. I will give an example that any industries that are taking power from 2 or 3 sources, and they have also any backup generator, diesel generator. So there is a chance of backfeed. So through backfeed, electrical hazardous energy is we can say regenerated or transferred from one path to another path. Other source of hazardous electrical energy is induced voltage. Let's say if any equipment is dead, but any equipment from its adjacent side can re-energize it, such as cables. They have the large capacitance, and if any other high voltage or medium voltage cable is moving in parallel with it, so it can induce voltage. This induced voltage is cause a severe shock, hazard, or arc blast whenever any person is going to work or will start to perform work on any electrical conductor circuit, such as motors, MV switch gears, HT switch gears, LV switch gears, or any electrical device or component. So the second step, once we identify all the sources of hazardous electrical energy, then the second step is to isolate it. I want to give an example that any motor starting from MCC bucket, let's say 480 volt, and any motor that is working on 3.3 kilowatt or 11 kilowatt, that should always be shut down or turn off through a control circuit. It never ever be disconnected on a load break, unless and otherwise a fuse or a circuit breaker such as vacuum circuit breaker, air circuit breaker, and SF6 circuit breaker are designed to break on load. So always break it on off load. First shut down it, then going to de-energize it. So after that, the third step is a physical verification. After disconnecting the fuse or any type of breaker to isolate or to shut down the equipment, after shut down the equipment, then you have to be physically verify that the breaker is not in a energized position. So you have to verify from the indication that physically it is de-energized. How we can do it? We can do it by raking out the breaker. Any type of breaker, that is 480 volt breaker, 3.3 kilowatt breaker, or 11 kilowatt breaker, we have to rake out so that we employ or human can physically see that the contacts are displaced from the source, and there is a clear gap between the source and the load contacts. So physical verification is a very mandatory process in establishing an electrically safe working condition. After doing all these three steps, the next step is to release electrical hazardous energy. So what kind of hazardous electrical energies are there in electrical system or equipment or conductor? Number one is the energy that is stored in the capacitors. Number two, the energy that is stored in the batteries. Number three, any kind of a voltage that is regenerated, such as in the cables that can generate voltage through capacitive coupling or electromagnetic induction. So all those sources that stored energy or through which energy can regenerate after its de-energization have to be released. The other point is the point number 5, to release a non-stored electrical energy. So what are the non-stored electrical energy that is can impact or that can cause injury or damage to health to any electrical employees such as technicians, supervisor, or engineer? So there are many non-electrical sources such as mechanical, rotational, pneumatic, hydraulic, gravitational. So all this non-electrical energy, they are also be released before going to proceed on any equipment or before going to proceed of work to any electrical equipment. I want to give an example of gravitational or rotational energy that can impact on electrical person that are working on a de-energized equipment. So one of the example is that any motor that is feeding through 3.3 kilowatt MV switch gear and is operating a load of conveyor belt that is in a vertical or in the inclined direction. If we will de-energize it, but due to gravitational motion or tension in the belt, the motor's rotor can rotate and the motor can act as a generator, and it can generate voltage through its rotational motion of the belt, and that voltage can create and generate a voltage if any person is working on terminal of the motor or MV switch gear. So it can create a serious shock hazard or maybe arc flash to the equipment or the conductor where the electrical person is working. So these are all non-electrical hazardous energies must also be released. The number 6 point is, after doing all this, we can apply a lockout tagout to the equipment. So there are certain processes and the procedures that are established by a company to control the hazardous energy. So there are three important things that is used in lockout tagout. So the number one is the organization shall supply a lockout tagout accessories to the employees. Number two, the employee must have training and the employee is to be a qualified employee. And the number third is there is a controlled procedure upon which any electrical employees work or following that procedure. So number one is that the person that is applying or working to apply a lockout tagout on any equipment of 3.3 kV, 11 kV, 480, they have experience, they have quality skills, and they have appropriate training. That training is based on the electrical system and the environment and in the workplace upon which this procedure is to be applied. The second important step is that the employer shall provide all such type of lockout tagout to the employee so that it can implement such lockout tagout program effectively. What kind of lockout tagout devices are available in the world that is used throughout the industry? So there are a lockout tagout box. We are in our company also using that lockout tagout box, a box in which all the lockout and tagout accessories are placed. So what type of lockout devices are there? Yes, safety lock pad, a lock with a key that can place on an MCC 480 volt bucket or 3.3 kV or 11 kV to isolate the disconnecting means, so that no any person can operate such electrical device or even remove the lock without any permission. In our company, there are procedure defined, and as a head of the department, I will pursue it, and I will always audit such procedure that is whether it is implemented effectively or not. So I have defined two types of procedure for two types of the person that are working in our company. The number is competent electrical person, and the second one is authorized electrical person. For competent electrical person, we have developed a procedure that any person, any qualified person who are working a voltage of 480 volt and below is authorized to work as well as perform lockout tagout on any electrical equipment. And for authorized person, we have developed a procedure that any person that is working on all level of voltage, we have 480 volt, 3.3 kilowatt and 11 kilowatt, can perform work on it as well as perform lockout tagout procedure. So now we are going to discuss a very important last two clauses, number 7 and the number 8. The number 7 is how to test or how to verify an absence of voltage. If we are applied a lockout tagout to any electrical equipment, that is, it might be a switchgear of 480 volt, it might be a switchgear of 3.3 kilovolt, it might be a switchgear of 11 kilovolt volt, it might be a motor of 3.3 kilovolt, it might be a motor of 480 kilowatt or 480 volt. So any equipment, any voltage. So there are certain methods that are described by standards, and NFPA 70 is recommended all those standards and witnessed it. So there are certain standards. Number 1, UL 1436. It provides that any electrical equipment or switch gear shall or can verify an absence of voltage through permanently mounted AVT, means absence of voltage testers. What are the application of this testing method? If any equipment of 11 kV and we are going to de-energize it or we are going to verify it, so there are certain high amount of incident energy. If any fault occur or any uncertain condition occur, then this incident energy is greater than 40 calories per centimeter square. That is more than category 4 arc flash equipment. So this is provide a substitution method as per hierarchy of control, so that an employee getting or taking an absence of voltage test, so it might not get hurt by any arc flash or any arc blast. So it reduces or eliminates the hazard by creating a certain distance from the 11 kV or 3.3 kV switch gear to the person where they are standing, and he can test absence of voltage through a hotline stick. So it reduces the hazard. Accordingly, the second type of automatic absence of voltage tester is a UL 61010 standard, and that is multimeter. There are certain types of multimeter used in the industry that are category 1 multimeter, which is used for domestic purposes, the category 2 multimeter that is used for commercial purposes, the category 3 multimeter that are used for industrial purposes such as testing an absence of voltage in the panels, MCCs less than 480. And the fourth one is a category 4 that is used in panels, MCCs and circuit breakers for testing absence of voltage greater than and above 600 volt. So these are the certain methods. The most recommended method by NFPA 70 is the 2-pole voltage tester, that is as per standard IEC 61243-3. So this is the recommended method by which you can verify an absence of voltage test. How we can do it? We can put these two terminals into the point where we are going to test the voltage, either face to face or either face to ground. So we can test it easily and with safety, and we can verify that the equipment is dead and there is no residual energy or any residual voltage. So next point is we are going to discuss the grounding. As a matter of fact, you know that any electrical equipment can get re-energized. How any equipment can re-energize? Number one, it might get re-energized due to induced voltage. Number two, it might get de-energized due to stored energy. Number three, it might get de-energized due to a proximity effect or capacitance of the cable or the adjacent conductor. So before going to proceed any type of job or any type of maintenance, the grounding should be applied. As we know that in 11 kV and 33.3 kV circuit breakers and switch gears, there is a earth switch. So we can apply earth switch by disconnecting the breaker and taking the breaker, and finally we achieve that if there is any unforeseen fault or unforeseen re-energization will occur, then this voltages can be grounded and the switch gear and the circuit always remains at the 0 volt, and employee can easily and safely work on that equipment. So as per STM standard F855, it provides that there is another type of grounding that we are used where there is not an earth switch. So this we call is an temporary grounding system. So what are the features of this temporary grounding system? So the features is that it should have a low resistance. The resistance is less than 0.1 ohm, so that any fault or any unforeseen energization of the circuit or any induced voltage can automatically ground it. So how we can apply it, temporary ground? It should always be applied between a source and the person, and it always applied on the load side, that is the secondary part of the circuit from source to load. That load side should be grounded with appropriate conductor so that it can sustain or it can carry a full load fault current or a short circuit current of that equipment. and the connection of that grounding to the conductor and the grounding should be clamped and should be torqued with tightness, so that it can sustain the mechanical and electrical strength. So you can also use a voltage stick to grounding. Sorry, you can use a grounding stick to ground any type of MV switch gear, LV switch gear, or any type of electrical equipment, so that then there is no any real energization of the circuit can occur. So this is a very important clause, and I have explained you that how we can create an electrically safe working condition, and we are discussing two very important clauses and two very important points. That is how to test an absence of voltage, and that second is how to ground so that employee can work safely and to avoid any shock, arc flash, or arc blast incident. Thank you from this session.